Uncle Mark.
Present.
We've been all over the world with our gods. We've explored all kinds of places. I think we need to get a little European if we're going to do something.
Yeah, we've been north, south, east, west, haven't we? We've just been all over in our crazy exploration of that graveyard of bad old ideas.
Yes, indeed. Uncle Doug,
I'm feeling like Italian food today.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Uncle
Doug,
Doug,
what can you put on our pizza?
Why don't I scratch that itch? Yeah.
What spaghetti can you throw into the garden?
What spicy meatball can I come up with? Well, dear uncles, if this show, and indeed this very episode, has demonstrated nothing else, it's that history is packed full of dead gods and goddesses whose usefulness to the species that conjured them has expired. And these deities were, in many cases, invented to explain and then govern over natural phenomena that had yet to be satisfactorily explained by the descendants of those that invented them in the first place. Some of these beings were assigned such prominent and ubiquitous phenomena that even though what they ruled over has been explained, their mystical power still casts a shadow over us even today. For example, we all know the name of Apollo, even though we know his chariot is a 432,000-mile wide nuclear furnace some 93 million miles away. We all know the name of Zeus.
It's a big chariot.
That's right. We all know the name of Zeus, even though we know that lightning is nothing more than the electrostatic discharge that occurs when an electrically charged region of the atmosphere and the ground temporarily equalize themselves. And we all know the name of Thor, even though we clearly know that the abs are nothing more than the result of steam chicken and countless Hemsworthian crunches. So, however, there are gods and goddesses whose dominions seem, at least to us, to be comically and pathetically narrow, and whose light and or reputation no longer shine in our modern and increasingly doomed world. Indeed, we've covered many of these pointless deities on this show even today. And this is certainly the case with the goddess I'd like to talk about today. I'd like to talk about the ancient Roman goddess Cardea, or Cardea. I don't know how to pronounce
Cardi
it.
B.
Cardi B.
Cardi B. She's fantastic. I love her.
No, this is the first episode. It's Cardea.
Oh, right. That's her mom.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Cardea's mythology is surprisingly robust for a goddess that most of us have probably never heard of. In fact, as we'll see, she is a foundational goddess to the Roman mythology. Indeed, she is credited with having saved the life of Procus, who would go on to be the grandfather of Romulus and Remus, the legendary founders of Rome. Mm-hmm. So, what was the divine purview that charge of this mysterious and powerful goddess? The door hinge. That's right, the door hinge. Now,
obviously,
yeah, as most gods and goddesses of the time, she had more than one responsibility, but her primary one was the humble hinge. Now, before we go on to discuss her story, let's stop for just a second and talk about what a truly game-changing technology the door hinge must have been, and what a world before the hinge must have looked like.
Yeah.
The invention and the inventor of the hinge are lost in the mists of time, and the best we can do is look for when hinges first started showing up in either archaeology or literature. The first known hinge appears to be what is known as the Hattusa pivot.
No, it's Stonehenge.
Stonehenge.
Boo.
Hey, boo. Boo. That's a joke so bad I'm astonished I didn't write it.
You know what? It's a good thing the door doesn't still exist, because that's a big motherfucking hinge.
The Hattusa pivot was from the ancient Hittite city of Hattusa in modern-day Turkey. It dates back to about 1600 BCE and is pretty much nothing more than a depression in a stone in a doorway, but it seems to be the first evidence of an actual hinge. The trail goes fairly dark until the appearance of bronze hinges in Egypt around 800 BCE, which is the same century that a small trade city right on the other side of the Mediterranean named Rome was founded. So hinges are mentioned in the Bible twice, including in 1 Kings, which claims Solomon's temple apparently had hinges of pure gold around 600 BCE. The other mention is in Proverbs 26:14, which is a clear reference to Uncle Doug during quarantine, quote, "As the door turneth upon its hinges, so doth the slothful upon his bed." Fuck you, Proverbs.
Can I just say how utterly worthless a gold hinge would be? That's a very soft metal. It is a terrible idea.
Yeah, we've talked about this on our episode about the Ark of the Covenant, that it had these big gold hooks on the side to put the poles through, which would eventually just go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Terrible
gold is
idea.
very soft.
Yes. Now, let's try and imagine a world without hinges. Prior to this invention, people hung or placed pieces of wood or woven blankets or mats in front of their doors and weighted them down with whatever they could find. Can you imagine the comfort and security it must have meant to be able to swing a thick piece of wood easily back and forth in your front door? If your only protection against the weather, animals, and enemies was a fucking woven mat, you can see that something as seemingly simple as a hinge might merit its own goddess. So that brings us back to Cardea. When I first started reading up on Cardea, I thought she would be just some silly lost goddess that would be good for a laugh. However, I found several legitimately surprising links to our modern era. Surprising, because apart from sanitation, medicine, education, wine, public order, irrigation, roads, the fresh water system, public health, and peace, what have the Romans ever done for us?
Right.
So, like I mentioned before, Cardea is the goddess of more than one thing. This is partly because the Augustan poet Ovid conflated Cardea with a much lesser goddess named Carna. Even though Carna was a lesser goddess, she was the goddess of the heart, and her name is the origins of the terms carnal, carnivore, etc. This conflation of the names Carna and Cardea, along with the addition of the dominion over the heart to Cardea's powers, is also apparently the origin for the terms cardio, which is the thing that I am not doing during quarantine.
Right.
And then, I just got to say, a side note, all this talk of medical science reminds me of the do not resuscitate order that I forged Uncle Mark's name on and keep in my breast pocket at all times.
It's fine. You know what? It's fine. I didn't get you anything for Christmas, so that's fine.
Ever. Carna also had the power to ward off striges, which were screeching, blood-sucking, owl-like monsters that will come to play in a second. Carna's origins are much more mysterious, with some scholars claiming her to be a subterranean goddess and some a lunar goddess. Among her many lesser dominions were such elements as beans and digestion. So, goddess for everything. But with her conflation,
at least we know what she sounded like.
With her conflation with Cardea by Ovid, all these attributes got combined into the lexicon of Cardea. Crazily, Cardea was not the only goddess of the doorway. There were actually two other gods that helped out with the task.
Wow.
Yeah, right? Forculus was the god of the actual door, and Lemontinus, if I'm pronouncing it, was the god of the threshold. So yeah, there were three gods for the door.
Wow. How do you keep track?
I know, right?
I know, you got to pray to three people just to enter your house.
No doubt. One of the most important events in the origin of Cardea was, of course, her rape by the god of the beginnings and endings, Janus, because all ancient Romans were apparently rapists. Janus, being the god of beginnings, is the origin of the name of the first month of the year, interestingly. The story goes that Cardea, who would often hunt in a sacred grove, had many gentlemen callers that would come looking for her, seemingly uninterested, but living in a particularly rapey period that we refer to now as history. She would promise her would-be lovers that she would meet them in a cave, and then she would disappear into the woods. This kind of cock-teasery would, of course, mean that what came next she deserved. When she tried to pull this same "I'll meet you in the alley behind the bar," only to disappear in an Uber trick that Uncle Doug has fallen for all too many times on Janus, she forgot that he had literally two faces, so he could always see what was coming and going, and so he saw her attempted assertion of her own free will, grabbed her, and raped her. As payment for her services, he granted her dominion over the hinge. So there you go.
Wow, what a great trade-off that turned out to be.
Exactly. Among her other powers was the ability to protect against the aforementioned striges, which were white-winged, hook-taloned creatures that looked like demonic owls. They liked the taste of infant blood, and interestingly, the singular for striges is strix, and a group of striges is called an Ivanka. In one of Ovid's tales, Cardea banished a strix from a child's room, but not before it bit him. She purified the threshold with a sprig of arbutus, which is kind of a strawberry-like plant, and hung a bundle of hawthorn in his window. Hawthorn, it is thought, is what made up the crown of thorns on Jesus' head. Finally, a sow was sacrificed to take the place of the boy's soul in the afterlife, because you know what they say, if you want to get into this boy's soul, you'll have to pay the troll toll.
Yeah, I knew that was coming. You smell that it's always sunny in Philadelphia a mile away.
This boy was the aforementioned Procus, grandfather of Romulus and Remus. So
interesting.
Yeah. Cardea's place among the early Roman deities was pretty central, actually literally central. The word cardo was not only the name given to the hinge, but it was the name of the central north-south street around which Roman cities were organized. And that is how we have the term cardinal.
Okay.
Yeah. This practice of having main north-south cardo around which you would build a city was used across the Roman Empire, and it is still actually used today in city planning, including in our own hometown of Salt Lake City. So yeah. And then the cardo was also a tenet in how Roman legions organized and marched their formations. So, yeah, that's kind of it. The next time you hear of a cardinal of the Catholic Church having heart trouble in the doorway of the main drag in Vatican City, remember Cardea.
That's right. A lot hinges on that god.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow! You're in a punny sort of place right now.
I don't really have a lot else to do for most of the show.
Well, the fact
really
that I somehow made it through this without writing a terrible unhinged joke is a testament to my restraint.
To something.
I just think, next time one of my doors squeaks, I don't know who to pray to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the god of the hinge.
All right.
Apologies.
All right. Well, with that, let us close the door.
Oh.